flying the colors now. It's official.
I like it. I like it. And very happy to have our special guest on today, Ian Cain. Ian is co-founder and executive chairman of the crypto incubator QUBIC Labs, as well as an organizer of Boston Blockchain Week, among many other things I've seen in his bio. So happy to talk with him today. Ian, thanks for joining. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me, guys. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So I guess I'd prefer to start it out here with the old proverbial tell us about yourself question. Just briefly, how did you get into the space and all the like up in the Northeast?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came into this space very randomly. I'd been involved in local government in a city that's just south of Boston called Quincy. And there'd been a lot of real estate development going on, mostly by way of residential, and I wanted to see some more commercial startup innovation activity take place. So we're not just a bedroom community with people leaving and going to the Cambridges and north and west of the Boston area. And so got together with a friend and we decided to put together a place for startups and founders to grow into the city. And we started broadly focusing on financial and government technologies before blockchain found us. So the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a quasi-organization called the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative, was running an education series for local elected leaders on potential blockchain deployments in cities and towns. And so I participated in that. And before long, I got to know about the tech and I got to know about, some of the startup ecosystem and the capital providers and the whole sort of network, and recognized that one, if we wanted to have a differentiator as a startup incubator or accelerator in the greater Boston area, we needed to have something different. And nobody was really pursuing this. So this is a path that we should pursue. It's nascent. This is new. It's emerging. It's interesting. It's exciting. And so we just started sort of beating a drum saying, all right, we're going to create a globally recognized tech and development hub for blockchain and crypto. And, Quincy is going to be the blockchain capital of the Commonwealth. And so over the next few years, we started building strong relationships and identifying founders. We received in 2022 a first of a kind commitment from the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative through their Tech and Innovation Ecosystem Grant Program. And so we matched up the public money with commitments of private capital, in-kind contributions of legal and accounting, and have been building a conceptual research and development and commercialization program to build, support, grow blockchain concepts from scratch right out of QUBIC. So that's the long and the short of it. But we weren't Bitcoin fundamentalists. We weren't crypto token people. We just sort of identified an opportunity to support a nascent space, and recognized and continue to recognize, as I'm sure we'll get more into this conversation, that there are real interesting use cases that can be applied using emerging technology to existing industries, as opposed to just using blockchain for just the sake of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Ian and I have known each other a long time, so I have an unfair advantage. And I have a bunch of gotcha questions. Is that cool?
Oh, great. Can't wait. It wouldn't be a conversation with you without a gotcha question.
That's all we do.
Yeah, it kind of comes with the territory. So you have QUBIC, and also you have been on the Quincy City Council for many years, and just recently ascended to become the president of the City Council, correct?
Yeah. So I've been on the City Council since 2016, and the official vote will take place in the new year for the council presidency, but I am projected to assume that role with the votes and support of my colleagues, which I believe should be in place. But yeah, so it's the city of Quincy is a strong mayor form of government, so the executive sort of makes all the decisions. The legislative body, the City Council, approves the budget. We approve appropriations, ordinances, or laws, and we make state resolutions, statements, or refute of sort of supportive issues. But the council president runs the meeting, sets the agenda with the mayor. So it's a good opportunity to sort of build I have a great relationship with the mayor as is, but to build a stronger collaboration around some of the work that we've been doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And is there an interplay between QUBIC and your civil service, or is that completely separate?
I mean, they're separate. They certainly complement each other. Especially in some of the tech work that we've been doing. So, with my public hat for the last almost 6 years, I've been leading the development of a citywide fiber optic network to be owned by the city of Quincy. And this is a novel project. So, people, residents, constituents have complained to me in the past about poor internet service and high costs of that internet service. And now we're at this point in society where if you don't have adequate access to broadband capacity, whether for work purposes at home, and obviously in the advent of the most recent pandemic, there were people who were educating at home, then you're precluded from participating in parts of our system. And so the value proposition we started building before, which was let's create a competitive marketplace for ISPs to offer internet service to residents as a utility, right? Sort of taking a policy position that broadband is now an essential utility as electricity is or water is, because it's now an essential part of people's lives. So we looked at some interesting models and decided on developing this citywide fiber optic network. We built public support for it. We put out paper surveys, which a city of 100,000 people, we got 12,000 paper responses, 80% of those overwhelmingly favorable. And what we're doing is creating a layer on top of this what would be a publicly owned infrastructure called a dynamic open access layer. And that will allow for the internet service providers to come in and compete off that line. And then basically the outward facing, or the face of the platform, will allow you to choose what you need, and at the right price. So ideally, we're trying to get a gig symmetrical internet service offering for residents of the city of Quincy down to about $50 per month over time.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So typically, does the ISP actually own the lines too, or
No, the ISP will essentially rent off of the publicly owned lines.
but
So,
is that the usual? Like in other towns, is it that way too, or is this a Quincy
no,
initiative?
this is our own thing. It's essentially the incumbents like a Comcast or a Charter or all these Verizon. They build and own their own infrastructure in cities and towns, and they do not allow other internet service providers to use those lines to offer services. And so in Quincy, we've got Comcast owns lines, and then Verizon offers DSL. Nobody's buying DSL. Because Comcast will not offer or allow ISPs to offer competitive service, and Verizon is not going to build a whole new system to support FiOS, we took it upon ourselves to provide what has been a resident-driven request to come up to devise a solution to a problem. So the city will own the lines, ISPs will rent off the lines, and then that'll give them access to offer service to people.
So that's interesting. And there's this kind of like longstanding debate in the U.S. and maybe elsewhere about net neutrality, right? Which is the use of restrictions and throttling and content filtering across the internet, which I would argue the downside of that is more of a dystopian, like you only get to see portions of the internet, and we've seen that in other countries. Does having a municipal owned fiber line, is that a hedge against that, or would you worry that a future political regime would be less friendly towards net
Huh.
neutrality?
That's a sophisticated question for sort of like a basic premise that we've set. And I'd say that, with an open access layer that we're setting, like it does allow for sort of exponential creation of different types of channels. So the city can, create a direct health channel that can go, as sort of like a direct pipe to people's homes. There could be an education channel that communicates through the public school system. Sort of you name a premise, right? It could be created because broadband has the capacity. The infrastructure that exists already has the capacity. It's just about having the permission or the right of way to actually use it, which is why we're creating our own. I don't see because we're keeping this as such a public open project. I don't see the government standing in the way, local government at least, of any sort of the restrictions that you just named.
Yeah,
And this
good.
model Sorry, Alec. Just want to throw in one here. This model, is this the first of its kind in the U.S.?
No, actually, so we took a model from a place called Ammon, Idaho. So we've been working with a group that's based in Salt Lake City called Entry Point Networks, who own the sort of the SaaS system that's the dynamic open access layer, and they've been awesome. They've been working as our sort of partners and project managers in this effort, and that's where I first read about this model. So cities and towns, especially rural areas, have been expanding on their development of broadband capacity. But this dynamic open access layer is something that's a game changer, especially in the face of trying to open up competitive markets in a place that has strong market potential, like a Quincy, which has 100,000 people. So this will be one of the largest deployments of a broadband system with open access. And there's an article which I'll send to you after this. I think it's in Wired magazine from a couple of years ago, but saying that the best internet in the country is actually in a place called Ammon, Idaho. So there's a whole profile on this. But the long story of that, I think you asked basically is how do these two fit together? It's between the role in the city council and the organization that we started with QUBIC. We're seeking to transform Quincy into the next level for the innovation and digital economy, right? So we're looking at what is that tech stack? How can sort of a municipality be as a service to its residents, to people, to businesses, in order to continue to have even the potential to succeed in this future economy that we're all working in now or planning to continue to grow in.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so if you would look out to your goals, 5, 10 years out, how do you see crypto sort of overlaying in that mission? And I mean, we could take this in many, many directions, but also curious your latest thoughts of the very draconian federal regulations that are coming out
Yeah, no,
right now.
this is the fun stuff for me because we've come because we haven't come as fundamentalists to the space. We're not jaded by like the fluctuations in the market, so to speak, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we come with a very pragmatic view of business fundamentals, and we understand government, and we have good proximity to it. Um, you know, the space is made up of many smart people who, in my opinion, don't really understand how government works. And you guys know this very well. It's that right now, and over the past few years, especially, it's almost like there's been this turf warfare where you've got different groups of people who are all fighting for a place either for their tech or their token to survive. But then there's the government and the central banks who don't want to be cut out, and so they're trying to make their moves so that they've got their piece in whatever's growing. So, but within that, there's a certain level of naivete that exists in this space where I think people don't understand the motivations or influences of people in the federal government, mostly elected officials. In Massachusetts, we've got two members, a member of Congress and a member of the U.S. Senate, that are vehemently opposed to crypto. One of them is leading the charge of this anti-crypto army, which I don't know if that really exists, which is why it makes for such a great bogeyman, right? Because it's this innocuous person or people without faces. I mean, there was just an article of this particular person writing directly to the Blockchain Association and saying, you're basically aiding and abetting Hamas because of your lobbying efforts to Congress. That's insane. That's insane. You know what I mean? And so, we're viewing this much as, to be quite frank and I guess a little more succinct, stop sending your money to DC. This is a grassroots effort. If you're not actually educating real people in a way that they can understand how the tech or some of the financial aspects might be able to benefit them in their lives, then people in government are never going to care because you got to work your way backwards. It's not this top down approach from from on high that you're going to somehow influence people in Congress to vote for something that people don't. It doesn't matter to them. It does not matter to them. So we're trying to figure out in our position, how do we build that grassroots effort? How do we really communicate in English what this space is, what it means, what it can do, how you can play in it, and to build those real world use cases that are identifiable and relatable. Because I think in the absence of that, you've got a whole bunch of people in this space just talking to each other in a very esoteric language. That's not gonna help move the needle.
Well, I mean, the debate continues, right? So it's nearly, uh, I guess it's nearly 14 full years since
Yeah.
Bitcoin was released, and on top of that, you have uh, a bunch of different views right now about how to scale Bitcoin. You have a lot of kerfuffle over this whole ordinals, inscription, extra data coming on Bitcoin, which some people view as spam. And then, of course, you have all the other crypto networks, if you can call them that are vying for some sort of piece of the pie. Um, it's, I've been in this space a while. I definitely remember people talking about, okay, we got to lay the pipes first before we can talk about, what's built on top of that, what's, you know, what sort of grand pie in the skies ideas we can have with all the different networks or tokens or what have you. We certainly got to get the infrastructure down first. So it's definitely, it seems to be something that you guys are trying to focus on too. But the local push is very, very interesting. But then, all the while going on, you still have the big players now, the big governments, federal governments, that are probably, in my view, primarily just getting interested in the tax revenue that they can take from this growing industry.
100%. Yep.
But they also claim and sort of cloak it on this KYC, anti-money laundering, which is basically the name of the bill. And then on top of that, a couple things here in my long-winded question. I just saw an interesting clip from Peter McCormick, his show. He interviewed Perianne Boring, who's a DC advocate for crypto, long-time crypto enthusiast and advocate. She mentioned how this anti-money laundering crypto law was actually, they sent it to the ABA, the American Bankers Association, to help draft it, and that was not really known until they figured it out. And so there you go. I mean, it's just, it's the same old story. Good old.
But that's not surprising to me, because, and that was the only group in the sort of groups of interested parties that I named earlier that we didn't talk about, is the banking industry.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be displaced. They're part of a larger system that supports politics and is part of the greater economy. So their existence is threatened a bit by this, right? If the whole purpose of decentralized technology is to disintermediate, those are the intermediators that are seeking to be displaced mostly, right? If we're talking about the exchange of value or monetary functions. So I mean, that's not surprising to me, which is why I think, at the end of the day, there will end up being some sort of mix, right, of all these parties playing together. I don't think it's going to be one solution, because I think as you continue to build those cases and applications that real people begin to use, then it'll be irrefutable, to other constituencies for them to participate. So, but yeah, that's not surprising that the banking industry has their hand in this, because there's plenty for them to lose.
So, for those that haven't been there, right, and maybe you can say a little bit about it. Like, Quincy is a medium-sized town south of Boston, but it's its own distinct town, right? It's not. It's. I mean, I'm sure people there commute up to Boston. I know they do, right? But like, it's a little city, and you're talking about grassroots, like, talk to the people, real issues. And so, what are people excited about in crypto that you're seeing? Like, what is the message that resonates, in a normal sized town in the US versus, in DC or Brussels?
DC or Brussels? That's a great question. And those are some of the things we're trying to create. And we're looking at models around the world about what people are doing to be more integrative into local systems and communities. Two examples: you've got Lugano, Switzerland, which Matt, you're a bit closer to. They're doing really interesting things with their municipality. We just had some representatives from the Lugano government come to Boston Blockchain Week in Quincy back in September to talk about some of their experience. They were one of the first people in the world to float a municipal bond offering on chain. And that's something that we're currently exploring. One of our member companies has been navigating cities and towns, at least in Massachusetts, to offer what would be the first municipal bond offering on chain in the U.S. And so, this isn't something that people haven't looked at, but we are, at least our member company is very close to making this happen. And this is sort of a 3-phase project. First being we completed a feasibility study. The second will be a private offering on chain, and that's basically because of liquidity purposes. But the third phase, which is the goal, is to create a resident or consumer facing platform that allows individuals or residents to participate in municipal bond offerings at low dollar amounts that essentially align their civic and financial interests at the local level. So imagine being able to take a $100 slug of a bond that will go towards street infrastructure work, right? And obviously the proceeds of that bond on a yearly basis at some point in time, ideally if you're not taking it out, would be eligible to be used for things like your water bill or your taxes. And these are the things that Lugano are doing, right? We also are looking at Rochester, New York, and Foundry, which is part of the DCG. They are doing some really interesting things in the community where they're educating middle and high schoolers on this space, and especially in terms of how to develop that know-how around Bitcoin mining. What are the fundamental education? What are some of the applications? Here's how you could potentially work in this system, and then connecting them to the actual operations so that they can have an idea of the potential of going into this space as an actual career. So, and one other project that we're working on that would allow people to have more connection and relatability is exploring putting real estate deeds on chain, because you've seen many market driven approaches to supporting real estate, and that's fine. Does it need blockchain when you could just sort of form an LLC to bifurcate ownership? No, not necessarily. But we're going to go to the source of truth, which is the deed. That's the actual fundamental ownership of the asset. And so we're in this position where we've got proximity to people who are willing to at least explore potential innovation and disruptions to innovation for the sake of an emerging or frontier technology that will connect to real people that they can actually understand. I think the next part of how we'd like to be able to communicate, because I think it's just like, if you can't touch it, then it has no pertinence in your life, right? So we're trying to figure out how can you get some of these more identifiable and relatable stories in front of people. And so we want to be able to tell some of these real world use cases from some of the groups that I just mentioned in a digestible way, but also get that information out through channels that people receive information in a digestible form that can allow them to, identify. And that's sort of like the grassroots hearts and minds effort that, at least I believe, my theory is that will counter a lot of this rhetoric that you're seeing, in Congress or, around.
Yeah, so all that's interesting. In particular, the property rights on chain. We've talked about that before on the show. Does that eliminate the need for title insurance?
Not necessarily, and I think some of those details are still being worked out. It's hey, one, how does this map work, and then how can a potential smart contract be designed to enable and facilitate these transactions, components of the transaction along the way. But stay tuned on that one. We'll come back on that one. We're in the early sort of identifying the plumbing, of the existing framework, so that we can figure out how to replicate it.
No, that's cool. I think it was last year, at least Wyoming and maybe another state allowed you to create a DAO as a Wyoming entity, and you could own property under that, which was kind of cool.
Yeah,
Different, right? That's not an on-chain thing. That's more of a corporate structure, but
right,
in the same
right.
vein.
I think somebody in Massachusetts was looking at that to move legislation to support similar concepts as well.
Yeah. So this is all really cool, and I'm sure that there's people in Quincy who are like, "Oh, this is crazy talk. Like, what are you doing with our with our city?"
Yeah. No. Well, if we're talking about broadband initiative, no, that's the number one thing that I get contacted on is when is it coming? And for for 5-6 years now. The blockchain thing, or whatever we're trying to do with QUBIC, uh, people aren't like it's crazy. In fact, we continue to find more diamonds in the rough, like people that live in Quincy or close to Quincy, or there's just proximity, or they're like, I can't believe this is here, like, and we find that they're working on some really cool, interesting projects, and we've been able to make some great partnerships. So we've been giving out. Small developer grants. They're non-dilutive grants through this grant program that we received from Massachusetts Technology Collaborative. And, that's a great offering. That is like the initial, sort of foray. Here's some free money. We're happy to support you. Let's guide those plans to continue your, sort of business plan and development. And, on the back end, we evaluate them for private capital contributions. But, we're encouraged by the sort of network effects that have grown out of what is a local effort, but as I always say, it's a global effort, just headquartered in Quincy, like any other place would be anywhere.
Yeah, and yeah, so many different interesting topics to pursue in the space, and I've had this show for a long time and have thought a lot about a lot of these things, but my enthusiasm has actually been tempered over the years because there's been obviously things that they've been selling they could do on Ethereum, which have either not scaled or they just haven't done. Um, but I certainly think that there's room for improvement on anything in the TradFi or antiquated uh, public sector government space for sure. So I guess in that vein, I mean, are there any? Obviously, you've talked about a lot already, a lot of the different sectors, but are there any sort of other killer apps that you've seen or you really think could change the game? And then on top of that, where does Bitcoin fit into all that? Because not I still, but I've probably more than ever seen that that's the biggest source of truth, as you mentioned before, that needs to be sort of preserved, and it's going to keep getting attacked as we see right now, even legislatively.
Yeah. So, killer apps. That's a really good question. And I wish I had been more thoughtful. I like where we are. I like what we're working on. So those are the most
Yeah,
exciting things in my mind because they exist and we're moving them forward.
yeah, indeed.
Um,
There's a lot already you've mentioned.
yeah, and but on the other side, um, as I said, we didn't come from this fundamentalist place of Bitcoin or any of the networks or platforms or tokens, and so I still think Bitcoin is a fascinating model and use case. I think, yeah, I think it's just going to continue to be um, attacked because of the vested interests, right, in the existing system. It challenges all of that. We don't have any out of our space. We don't have any. We don't have any interesting applications, that either connect to Lightning or anything like that. We've tried to explore some of those partnerships, but they didn't really go anywhere, at least in our past 4 years. But that's not to say that we wouldn't continue trying. It's just sort of we're navigating in a space that we firmly understand, given our proximity to tech and government and capital, right?
Hmm.
So, and that's what we will continue to do. If the opportunity to be more supportive to, sort of the fundamental Bitcoin use case, then we would of course pursue that. But
Nice.
So, and I think this is accurate, but Fidelity, obviously, a massive Massachusetts company, Abigail Johnson, I think for sure the largest institution that leaned forward into Bitcoin way before anyone
mm-hmm.
else. I think it was 2014 when they started mining Bitcoin. I could be wrong, but it was early. any connections between them as a big Massachusetts company and you guys?
Yeah, they've sponsored a couple of the events that we've hosted over the last couple of years, and they've got a pretty we know their digital asset group, and their diaspora is pretty strong. So the folks over at Castle Island, Matt Walsh, Nick Carter, we've been collaborating with them for the past number of years. We're trying to get to know some more folks in the space. A good friend of mine who had come from the State Street universe is now part of their what they call the FCAT group, and he had been such a great friend in starting to get us established in the space and making great connections. So we continually we had a call with them recently to talk about some of the things that they're working on, especially around sort of tokenization of real world assets. So yeah, we're in touch with them, and of course we'd want to do more with them. QUBIC, by the way, is like a ragtag team of me and John, and we have been hustling this thing for the past 4 years. So we can focus on as much as we can handle in any given point in time, which we do a lot, and we're proud of what we've been able to create. But we're just a ragtag team of of misfits trying to make something here.
That's all of crypto right there.
Yeah.
So it was, I think, because we were talking about it, it's fairly recent that you took kind of more of a central role in Boston Blockchain Week.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about that? What's that community like? What's your involvement?
Yeah, sure. So I think before the pandemic, there was a venture capital fund that used to plan what was called Boston Blockchain Week, and there was maybe a virtual one in 21, and then they decided not to host it anymore. We got word of that, and at the time, we were just kind of coming up with our value proposition and about to secure that grant through the state, and we said, what, strategically, this makes sense for us if we're trying to sort of organize an effort here through QUBIC and in Quincy, then why don't we bring it here and create, bring that energy here. But we also, at the time, everyone was leaving the Northeast or different parts of the country and going to Miami. So we recognized that there was this huge current of electricity, vibrancy, enthusiasm that was centering on Miami, and there was a vibe, right? And you can't do anything about the weather in the Northeast. That's fine, but you can still try to create a more culturally friendly environment for the space. And so that's what we were trying to do: is take a little bit of that energy in Miami, plant it up here in Quincy, and let it grow and thrive. So our first effort in 22 was good. We raised some good money to throw an event. We had somewhere around 60, 65 speakers that came from all over the country to talk about different components of the industry. And but last year, or a couple months ago in September, we hosted our second. Again, this was better. We were able to really build on that fundamental platform that we built in 22. We had 75 speakers from across the world. We had, as I said, these people from Lugano, Switzerland come. We had folks come from Dubai. We had folks come from California and Florida and New York and Chicago. So and it had that energy, right? It's the energy that we're looking for, which is people came. One, they get surprised at the sort of the quality of the production and the content of the programming. And then we were able to successfully connect the daytime programming to some nightlife. So we got more work to do, but we certainly have a growing concern that we can be proud of. And so again, the whole thing is if QUBIC has this a number of components to it, including this R&D program, the core sort of accelerator incubator. Part of our effort is community and ecosystem, and Boston Blockchain Week is a big part of that. Because we just recognize that, hey, if you're not matching that level of energy and the cultural component that exists in this space, then it's not gonna thrive here. People are going to go to other places where they're either more excited to live or they feel more welcomed. And that was Miami, but we're trying to support that effort here. And there are a lot of other groups in the Boston area that are doing the same. There's the Boston area has a group called the Boston DAO, which does a great job at hosting monthly sort of meetups and getting the participants in the space together. And they host an event called ETH Boston, which will be held in the springtime. I don't have the dates, but again, there are very strong concerted efforts who are working in the face of our federally elected officials to support this space and let it grow and thrive.
Well, I'm not going to ask you when you're running for Senate, but I would certainly support that. But but Boston is like a natural home for a crypto community, a Bitcoin community. I mean, you have huge university presence, lots of tech companies, and like if any city in the U.S. is actually well suited for it, other than you're right, like it's going to be cold there a lot of the year, and Miami looks great on a postcard, but I do think it makes sense, right, as a crypto hub. And so that given, and for the people that care, Ian and I went to college together. So I'm curious, like, is there a groundswell in the university world in Boston, and does that contribute to the crypto community?
Yeah, there are a number of there are a number of university clubs that contribute to the ecosystem, and they're all in touch with each other. All the the one that we've gotten to know the most, we had a few startups come through. QUBIC is Northeastern. They were one of the first to start a blockchain club, and so they're really exciting. Over last year, we got to know the Bentley Blockchain Association. Harvard's got one that's pretty active. MIT has a bunch of sort of distributed activity that goes on through the university. But yeah, I think there's two things here. I think that there's a difference between folks who are there is a difference between folks who are more entrepreneurial minded and then those who want to get jobs in the space. And so, where we're trying to identify founders, we have found that we've been most successful with, at least, people that have worked in some primary industry for at least a decade, that understand how to adapt an emerging technology to a space that they've been in and understand. I think from the student perspective, I think a lot of the students are looking for placements, and that could be, Fidelity's been hiring in droves in this space, and so I think that could be with the Fidelities or some of the larger State Streets when they do have distributed ledger teams, or the BNY Mellons, those type of things. But the student entrepreneurial community is, at least for us, and we've spent time in some of the school systems, I think it's been evasive, but there's certainly a lot of interest in the space, and I think those people are certainly at the forefront of of the entire space overall. Like if they're really interested.
You didn't mention Boston College, which I've heard is referred to as the Harvard of Newton, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I know BC has a club. I actually have not connected with the club yet.
Oh my God. What
Yeah.
kind of double eagle are you?
What's the alumni association telling you?
Actually no, but talking about double eagle, the BC High community has been very interesting. We had a group of it must have been a class of 40 young men that came to Boston Blockchain Week for a day, which was really cool. And I just spoke at an entrepreneurship class a couple months ago. So they're really into this.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I expect more from our alma mater, but at least the high school. So for everyone, you're a double eagle if you went to BC High and Boston College undergrad, and a triple eagle if you go to the law school. Is generally, I guess, any of the grad schools, right? Is that?
I think historically and traditionally it's the law school, but I think
Yeah.
people have made adaptations of that over the years.
Yeah, sure. It's a dubious honor, but BC has a strong community in Boston for sure.
Definitely.
I don't know about
Yep.
the rest of the country. So obviously, like, there's your political life and your professional life at QUBIC, but like just personally, you must have, you know, started drinking some of the Kool-Aid. I know you said you're not, bringing dogma to the space, but you care enough to make this, really, it seems like a life's work right now, at least for where you are. So, Like, what about it is exciting to you? Like, what personally is piquing your interest?
I mean, we've seen the opportunity from the get go, and I think one of the things that you mentioned Boston as a locale, and being the right place for this. The one thing that comes at odds with innovation sometimes is speed, right? Or people want to move so fast and change things, but sometimes the speed of the environment might not match the ambition that comes from the innovation. And Boston is not a speedy place. Boston is slow. It's been around for a while. The roots are deep. The institutions have been around for a while. The people and the families have been around for a while. And so when you have an emerging or frontier technology like blockchain and crypto trying to disrupt, I think sometimes people's patience gets tested. We see this as a component to a suite of technology and applications that can potentially benefit people, right? And what's the most exciting part of where we're participating is that we're creating a real world laboratory to test some of these concepts, and that's fun. We in a place that uh, most people are following others. This is a place to stand out, and we're having fun experimenting, and it's fun because QUBIC is a creation of our own, and so we've got a little bit of controlling our own destiny with this organization. And everybody who's in this space, it's nice to be at the forefront of something because people bring a level of energy and excitement and different expertise and perspectives to it. So it's just fun being in a new space and to sort of be charting a very unknown path. That's fun. I think there are many traditional paths to potentially go down, but something that we don't know the outcome yet, I think, is just an interesting place to play.
Yeah, and obviously you have a very local nature to it, but you mentioned Switzerland. We have El Salvador as well.
Right.
Other countries trying to, and other smaller locales, geographic places, trying to do what they can do. Are there any other global cities that are kind of off the radar that you've heard of or looking towards?
Off the radar, I don't know about
I don't. It
that.
doesn't have to be off the radar,
Yeah,
but
no, but I mean, you hear a little bit more about friendly environments like Singapore, Dubai, UAE generally, I think is a little more favorable of an environment, or they're willing to welcome the space in ways that might be regulatorily prevented in the United States, which is disappointing from all of our perspectives. But those are the places that you hear about. Um, but I think the point of all of those, El Salvador's and Lugano's, and let's put Quincy on that map, is that once you develop some of these templates, then they're exportable. They're replicable. We can bring them to other places. They become more relevant and they matter. And then they connect to people, and they connect to the people who you want to be influential for moving pieces of legislation that might matter to the industry as a whole. So again, the premise for us is pretty simple. It's if you don't get this in the hands of real people, then it's not going to happen. You can't just kind of sit around and expect because you want it somebody to make something happen for you. You got to build a premise or value proposition around it.
yeah. And identity is, I think, a perennial problem here. It's not necessarily solved other than with a government issued ID.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know if you guys have looked into different identity solutions with public private
Yeah,
key
we
cryptography.
we have we've got a couple of companies that have come through QUBIC that are looking at digital identity. And again, I think that starts with a use case. Where in which place or department or you know which part of the system, and it probably will connect to government. Where does it start? It has to start somewhere. Where's that fundamental place where your identity, I guess, permeates or grows into all the other things. or connects to.
Yeah.
What do you
So
see? Actually, what are you seeing for that? What's an interesting?
Well, I like the idea. Speaking of use cases, I mean, this has been talked about by a lot of different startups as well over the years. There was this Civic, a couple others I'm thinking of. Also, I remember Zuko Wilcox from Zcash saying how the great thing about, I mean, it's obviously many good things, but one of the good things about public-private key cryptography is that you could basically answer any question that's put forward by, say, a legislative or a state agency that needs to know something, or even like a bar. Like, you need to know that you're 21 or not, but you don't necessarily want to even give up your age or your address, so you don't want to hand over your ID.
Yeah.
So you could just, you could say that you're of age, but you don't have to give up any more information than that. Obviously, it gets complicated. Whose phone are you using? There's a lot of things that way deep in that sphere that I have not explored so much. But I think are interesting, and I would love if we could add some of that to the public space. But I haven't seen anything like really exploding off the scene there. And then of course you have the whole thing with Bitcoin, where by nature it is not attached to identity with purpose, and that's better for Bitcoin. And yet, we have our certain senators in certain states and in other places really going after this system and others, and really trying to say that anytime you're going to interact with an agency, an exchange, a bank, which is their main way at this point, or vilifying transactions in the space, completely saying it's connected with Hamas, which is just insane. But anytime you're going to interact with a licensed entity, then you basically you better make sure that that's the only way that you can even spend coins.
Right.
That's the only. Of course, it's not the only way that you can, based on the nature of the system. But that's what they want to do. I think that's pretty clear. They want to, you're not going to be able to. No way you're going to, in the United States, be able to buy a house with some non-custodial Bitcoin, or
Right.
something like that. So it's still a battle. I think it's a long battle, and I think there's a lot of, kind of like I mentioned before, there are a lot of dreams, a lot of hopes. A lot of them haven't come to pass. Maybe from network scaling problems. Maybe just because they're not that interesting. But I do think that the store of value function for sure of Bitcoin is not going away. It's just a question of, are you able to store that value secretly and privately however you want, or are you going to have to basically essentially own the ETF to store value? And that's the way that the United States is going, which I think is disappointing, but it's, like we said before, that's the battle that everybody's
Totally
facing off with right now. So it's kind of, back to your original question, I don't have any other use cases that I've seen that have really flown. I love this idea of prediction markets. Way back in the day, they were trying to do those on Ethereum and some other networks, and Ralph Merkle himself, I think, said that prediction markets would be a better form of democracy if we could make them scale and make them work. Haven't really seen that yet. Maybe we will. And then, you get back to the question of identity as well. So I think identity is the core one. If you're going to talk about the public space, you have to solve it in a safe way. And then you have to scale it somehow.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's what you guys are working on as well. So,
well, we'll follow up on that.
Great. I would love to see the progress there. I think that the dream of prediction markets is still very interesting, for sure.
So I have kind of a philosophical question for you, Ian. So one of the kind of like weird juxtapositions I see in crypto, and maybe specifically Bitcoin, is the same groups that have always been like, Bitcoin was established as like, a counterpoint to government, as a counterpoint to federal reserves, as like, this kind of disenfranchised group has now their decentralized hope. A lot of those same people are super excited when like a pro Bitcoin government gets installed, right, around the world, and they like hop on the next plane down to be at the rally. And you're clearly in the like there is a role for government, municipal government in your case, but there's a role for government in fostering an environment for innovation, and part of that innovation can be crypto.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what would you say to like the foaming at the mouth side that's like there should be no role? In fact, like Bitcoin was created as an antithetical entity to government.
That's really funny. It's just another one of those things that I've learned a lot in the local level over the last 8 years, and the dissonance that exists in people's minds is palpable, and I think that's just another one of those things where people believe that they believe something, but clearly their motivations change or their actions speak differently. Um, so I'm not gonna tell them what to believe or how to live their lives by any means, but I think I'm just coming at it from a more realistic place. There are entities and systems that exist. You can influence and augment those systems if you have uh, the fortitude and patience and energy, right? And so, we're going to use whatever we can within our ability and confines, I guess, to just try to continue to move that needle forward, because that's how progress is made. It doesn't just, it's not just like this. And so that's why I think most of this, I don't even want to call it a fight, but most of the development of this space is not for the faint of heart. I mean, no innovation really is, because it takes a long time, and if you don't have a long-term outlook and if you don't move at the pace of reality, then, good luck. But in fact, living to that almost unrealistic expectation is only to your own detriment at the end of the day.
Yeah, and following up on that, what what kind of generations are you seeing here that are getting involved or have been involved? We were just talking last week on the show. Like, I don't see too many more boomer aged. I don't want to sound disrespectful, but people that are quite older, like a Michael Saylor, quite a bit older than like a startup entrepreneur, typical in the dorm room. He made an amazingly bold move. Now he's not self-custodying it. I mean, he has institutions that are helping, but he made an amazingly bold move, putting his corporate treasury into Bitcoin, and that's a pretty elastic move, I would say, for someone of his. I'm not trying to sound simple, but his status. He's been around a publicly traded company 20 plus years. It's a pretty good move that I don't see too many other CEOs like at least willingly make. And therefore, as you usually see with technology, I just think it's going to be the young generation. But I don't know. That's kind of maybe my final question. Are you seeing maybe the opposite, or something that I'm not seeing? Like maybe there are some older generation bureaucrats or local level people that do want to change it and maybe see that there's some hope there, and they really want to dive in.
We see a mix, but as I said, with founders that we support, we have seen, at least from our perspective, and granted, we're not a traditional VC. We're a 501c3 nonprofit supporting economic growth, and using the space to do so.
Yeah.
But we, most of the folks that we've worked with, as I said, have had professional experience in industries where they can see how this can be adapted into spaces. But we also work with young people who who are excited, enthusiastic about the promise of the space. So it is an honest mix. I think it's just about you said the bureaucrats, like there's risk profiles, right? I always say entrepreneurship is a luxury, and so even to try to create something in this space, you need to have that comfortability of and to afford time to pursue it. So some of the people who are bureaucrats might not have the opportunity to really do something as meaningful as they might believe from outside, and so they work within. And we know those people too, who work at the State Streets and the Fidelities, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen a healthy mix, and I think, but I think it still matters to understand business fundamentals and core industries before you can really try to adapt an emerging technology to them.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, we've probably seen over history, and that sometimes it is the folks who are the least jaded who who might be able to have the most impact. So we'll see.
Well, selfishly, I think our generation and younger are going to take over these bureaucracies soon. They have to. They better.
That sounds very hopeful.
I am hopeful. I am indeed. Well, listen, Ian, I think this is great. This is a good spot to close it. As we do, any final comments? Where can our listeners find out a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It was great to be with you, Matt, and great to be with you, my friend Alec. You can find more about us, QUBIC Labs, on our website, QUBICLabs.com. Please feel free to reach out to us. Again, we're running still a R&D program where we're providing $25,000 non-dilutive grants to startup founders and teams who want to pursue blockchain concepts. So feel free to reach out there, and look forward to speaking with you guys again sometime in the future.
Excellent. Will do. Ian, thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you.
Cheers, man. Great to see you, man.